Welcome back to West Coast Bannerman. This is the Bare Necessities, Episode 2, Picking a Faction. Episode 1 will come out shortly, and that will cover the finding and establishing a community. But due to popular demand, we are starting with picking a faction. And so let's go ahead and take a look at which factions are available. We have 10 factions currently that you can play with. And to go into more detail, you can check out the World Council app. It's a free app. You can download it for army building, to check out every card in the game, to track your collection. And you can also go to A Song of Ice and Fire-stats.com and do the same, but you can do a lot more there as well, such as check out tournaments, sign up for tournaments, track your ELO rating, check out the power levels of different things in the game. So in this video, we will be checking out each faction, doing a short highlight reel of each faction. And those highlights will include the base deck. The base deck is 14 cards that you will use every single game. 2 copies of 7 cards. We will also check out the unique assets. These are things only found in that faction, or at least are very prevalent in that faction more so than others. And we will lastly look at the zone focus. The zone focus is in reference to what's called the tactics board. The tactics board is a huge, unique, and wonderful component of the game you don't see anywhere else. It is on the side of the battlefield, and this is where your non-combat units, the units that you choose to bring along in your army building list that do not participate on the battlefield, when you use your turn to activate them, they only have one action, and that is to claim one of these zones. We have the Crown, Wealth, Tactics, Combat, and Maneuver zone. So when I reference a zone focus in the upcoming faction highlights, they will be talking about these. We can go into more detail on the tactics board in future videos, but for now, let's move on. First of all, getting started, it's nice to have a starter set. Makes sense. The neutral faction does not have a starter set. Neutral faction is one of my favorites, but in order to start the neutral faction, you will need to pick up the Heroes 1 unit box. That's where you'll find their base deck. The Neutrals base deck is a variety of cards with a strong tutor element. A tutor element means that you can dig for cards. They have 2 different types, digging through the discard or through the deck. And so that covers the base deck of Neutrals. They have a little bit of everything. Also, their unique assets, like I said, about not having a starter set. Lastly, the neutral faction, of course, uses only neutral forces, unlike every other faction outside of Free Folk, which can bring up to 12, which can bring up to, which can bring up to 30% of their total point limit in neutrals. The neutral faction uses only neutrals, 100% neutral forces, and that is unique to them, of course. Lastly, their zone focus. Through their deck, you'll see bonuses claiming the tactics zone. The tactics zone being the zone where you draw cards and place a condition token on an enemy unit. And with the Stormcrow affiliation, you'll want that wealth zone for free attacks off that zone, as well as bonuses for controlling it. So now that we have the neutral faction covered, every other faction in the game does have starter sets. So we're just going to go through them, top down, left to right, starting with House Stark. Before moving on to House Stark, it is important to note that the original starter set of the game is a Stark versus Lannister starter set. Although very outdated in model quality and card components, you can find that starter set for an extremely good price and could be the way you want to go. So that being said, the Starks and Lannisters also have their individual one-player starter sets. So let's start off with House Stark. House Stark, their base deck is going to focus on alpha striking and attack buffs. They come in swinging, and they swing hard, and they keep swinging hard throughout the game. They have unique assets such as the North Remembers is a theme throughout their deck, and their units, meaning they can continue to hit hard or hit even stronger while they're wounded. Another unique asset is the Dire Wolves. They have the 3 brothers that you can bring in your army that allows you to bring along their associated Dire Wolves. And also, House Stark is the most prevalent with minor house affiliations such as Tully, Umber, Karstark and Mormont, and also Crannog from House Reed. So more than any other faction, you can use synergy of minor house affiliations with House Stark. Their zone focus is the combat zone, which is a free attack, and the maneuver zone, which is a free movement or retreat action. So this is your quick highlight overview of House Stark. Let's go ahead and move on to House Lannister. The final original faction that the game released with, their base deck is going to revolve around debuffing the opponents and panic testing them, possibly doing wounds or even extra wounds or healing off of failed panic tests of your enemy units. Unique assets of House Lannister include Lannister Supremacy. It's an order ability on units, and the Tywin Commander attachment that retaliates against an enemy attack with a panic test that will do extra wounds if they fail. Counterplay amongst the Lannisters is huge with their counterplot card, as well as shutting down abilities and possibly even extra effects that can counter things like the Tyrion attachment. Another unique asset of House Lannister is the Clegane and the Faith of the Seven type of units and commanders. Of course, we have the Mountain, Gregor Clegane, in multiple forms. He's all about auto wounds, damage, attack, so that he can really switch up the style of play of Lannisters. As well as the Faith of the Seven, we have the High Sparrow, and he is all about passing morale tests of your own friendly units and triggering effects off of that. Healing, extra damage, etc. For the zone focus of House Lannister, we have the Crown Zone, which is a panic test to an enemy unit from the tactic zone that can cause automatic damage. And the Wealth Zone, which is the healing friendly units up. So those two zones is what they focus on in order to boost their effects. Next up, we have House Baratheon. The House Baratheon base deck is all about retaliation, and they have some attack buffs cards as well. You come into House Baratheon swinging, you better be prepared to get hit back. Unique assets include a split loyalty mechanic. You have the Stannis side and the Renly side. The Stannis side is all about R'hllor. R'hllor is panic damage, can be passing morale tests with a faith mechanic similar to the Lannister Faith of the Seven. And then you have the Renly side, which is tanky units, healing them up, auto damage, more healing, and some more healing. For the zone focus of House Baratheon, they love the crown and tactics. Moving on to House Targaryen. The House Targaryen base deck is all about movement with some attack buffs as well. Unique assets include an extra card with their commanders that sub out a base deck card. So the commanders have a little more influence on how the deck feels when you pick one. They're the only house with dragons, of course. They have an all cavalry starter set. So Khal Drogo and Jorah Mormont are your commanders in their starter set with 4 different trays of cav. And also a little bonus of Stormcrow units not being neutral, which means you can bring as many Stormcrows as you want and still have 12 points of neutral suspend. Their zone focus is the maneuver zone only. Let's head all the way south over to House Martell. Their base deck is all about debuffs, debuffs, debuffs. They do not let you do what you want to do in entirety. And they also have a couple trick plays up their sleeve, such as Cunning Ploy, which allows a unit to pass their action and give it to someone else. Unique assets of House Martell include Doran Martell, their leader. In both of his forms, he is quite unique. He can give you an alternate path to scoring victory points. And he can also be a commander, but in a non-combat unit form, controlling his personal guard, Arya Hota, on the battlefield. Another unique asset of House Martell is poison counters. You can see these poison counters with Manticore Venom from the Viper. You can also see it with Tyene Sand, the NCU. Lastly, the zone focus of House Martell is the combat zone and the crown zone. Moving on to House Bolton. House Bolton is the most recent faction. They are a mini faction. Their base deck is all about panic, panic, panic. They have a couple little attack buffs in there, but usually due to the enemy being panicked. So they are all about the panic. They are a mini faction, which is unique to the game at this point, and that simply means they don't have many options. A unique asset also to the House Bolton is you can receive a free Bastard Boy attachment per list. And Ben Bones, the character attachment in the Bastard Boys box, is free when putting onto the Bastard Girls combat unit. Bolton neutrals are not counted as neutral within the House Bolton faction. So when you take something like Flayed Men, they do not use up your neutral points. And their zone focus is not really any. You might say crowns because of the free panic test off of the crown zone, which can cause effects to trigger. But specifically, none. Let's talk about the Night's Watch. The Night's Watch have no sigil, first of all. Their base deck is very variety packed. They can pump up attacks, they can defend, they can heal, they can get a free move. They have 2 effects per card. One effect is in a response trigger. The other is when a unit activates. When a unit activates, you may play the card to attach the card to the unit, giving them a permanent buff as long as they keep passing their panic tests. Unique assets of the Night's Watch include stacking many of those attached cards, creating a super unit, if you would. War machines are only seen in the Night's Watch at the moment, and also throughout the Night's Watch faction, you'll see strong characters in every form, commanders, attachments, and NCUs. The leaders of the Night's Watch are really what make the faction shine. Zone focus is none in the Night's Watch base deck. You might see a couple throughout the different options throughout the army, such as Jon Snow and Don Onoy, but in the base deck, you have none. The Free Folk faction heading all the way up north are going to have a base deck entirely focused around hoarding, horde tactics, surrounding, combining movements, combining attacks, combining abilities even. They also have some reinforcements effects, such as popping out a new unit when a unit dies, and moving models from one trade to another. Unique assets include monsters. They have giants, mammoths, and skin changers with animals such as boars, wolves, eagles, and even a panther. Don't forget about Varamir and his polar bear as well. A very special thing with the Free Folk is Mag the Mighty, the commanding giant, has an entirely new deck he brings along when you use him as a commander. So you swap out the Horde Tactics deck, and you put in a deck all about monsters. The Free Folk have many, many options. Thus, they do not allow neutrals in the Free Folk faction. They don't have a specific zone focus in their base deck either, and that's the Free Folk. Lastly, we have House Greyjoy. House Greyjoy's base deck is healing, attack buffs, some more healing, and some more healing. They have a few unique assets that include the pillage mechanic, which is almost entirely theirs and theirs only. There is a single neutral unit that also has pillage, but the House Greyjoy faction is the only faction that has it as a special in every single Greyjoy unit. Pillage is a buff that each unit receives, or a unit receives, I should say, when they complete a melee attack against an enemy unit and destroy a rank, one rank or more. They get 1 pillage for each rank destroyed, and that buffs up that unit. Each unit might also have specific effects depending on how many pillage they have. What Does Dead Man Never Die is a very well-known card in the House Greyjoy faction that prevents the death of a unit. And also they have some resurrection mechanics in their NCUs. The zone focus of the House Greyjoys are the Wealth Zone and the Combat Zone. With the zone focus is that sometimes their effects are boosted by the enemy controlling the zone, not just yourself. That is our quick and dirty faction highlight review. I hope this gave you a little information to help you decide where to start. Let me know in the comments which faction was for you when you started. Thank you so much for watching, and if you subscribe, the Bare Necessities will come to you.